Hello, welcome again to my YouTube channel. This is Anil. Today we are going to talk about very interesting topic. As you know, I'm working on a video series of my Tesco interviews. Today I'm going to talk about round 2, which was a design round. And this was interesting. When I was preparing for this round, I got to learn about so many advanced things, and I got to learn about cap theorem, though I have implemented it earlier. I worked on consistent hashing and some of the microservices and micro frontend concepts. So if you are going to appear for a design round, this video may be helpful for you. And again, if you are not going for any interview, if you are going for designing a scalable solution, again, you will find this video helpful. So stay tuned. Let me know about your feedback in the comment box for any of your interview or about any designing or the architect level work in your day-to-day life. So let's start. This was second round with Tesco. So this was the second round, and they asked me to appear on Teams so that we can interact on videos. At the same time, they want to judge me on my designing skills. So they presented a problem. I'll quickly show you what the problem was, and then here is the problem. I'll walk you through this problem. But prior to that, I just want to talk about, they asked you to draw a sketch very quickly because it's just 1 hour round, and you need to at least should be able to present your thought process on a very high level. Mostly these design interviews are from 1 hour to 2 hour, basis on which company and which kind of standards they follow. But I found this really interesting. The interviewer was really nice, and he was talking me to create a Twitter. Then, as you know, Twitter itself is a big application. It available on mobile as well as on web. It consumes variety of content. It takes your URLs, it takes your text, it takes your images and whatnot. So it is important for us to ask relevant questions before directly jumping into the solution. You must be thinking to create hundred of features where the interviewers might be looking for 2 or 3 core features, and that has happened in this interview as well. So I asked some of the questions, whether this is going to write text or this is going to write images and other media forms as well. So he clarified me that this is going to work for text only. Then the second question which I asked, whether this application is going to be global, because when he asking us to create Twitter, that doesn't mean that he is thinking about all such concept, whereas these are the good questions. If you discuss in advance, this will give enough understanding that you are critically thinking about a solution, and it's important. It creates impact. So what I asked, and what kind of NFRs, non-functional requirement that I noted, it should have a login functionality. It should be able to post a tweet. There should be a timeline view. So the timeline should also be able to create. It should be mobile and web friendly UI, global delivery, and text only with 240 characters. So this was kind of a high level requirement that I received. And then he talked about some of the NFRs like 6,000 tweets per second should be the right, and read definitely should be higher. And this is with any social media application. There should be more reads than write. So read was 600k tweets, 30 millisecond read on request, large number of followers, and DAU 1 billion. So I need to talk about the API details. I need to talk about how the data will be stored, and then I discuss with them whether the text will include just messages or this will also contain the hashtags or other metadata information as well. And then I ask about user information, location, browser, etc. details. They confirm whenever, because it might happen like it should work asynchronously. As soon as someone is posting a tweet, they should not be blocked if the data is not saved. Rather than it should be a mechanism that you should send the acknowledgement immediately, whereas the data should be ingested and saved and replicated through different nodes. Then I talked about, I'll take you through the design, but some high level things that I noted. So I splitted this design from the database perspective into two. One I use for RDBMS because RDBMS is very good in terms of managing users information, whereas NoSQL information is very useful, where the non-relationship data should be stored more in the document format. And then AWS has three some of the component level, but they don't focus on any cloud services. That is kind of thing you need to ask whether you need to be specific or what services to be used, what all, because AWS may have different solutions, Azure might have different solutions, and GCP might have different solutions. So first you need to design the overall architecture. Then you need to talk about, okay, if I need to do it practically, so these are some of the things that I need to take from AWS. These are some of the services that I can leverage from any other GCP or something, right? Prior to that, it is important that you should talk about how you will solve this problem if you would do it on prem. Then there are some mapping tables and some followers and all those things. So I'll get back to this, but let me show you what design I prepared. This I quickly designed on Twitter application on for Twitter application on draw.io. So as you know, this is like 1 hour is the total time frame, where first 10 to 15 minutes you should talk about any requirement, any clarification that you need, and then you should directly jump to the solution. And solutioning, definitely you cannot explain everything in just draw.io. You need to have few of the conversations, and this I have not changed just for demonstration on this. This was the exactly same figure which I used, and this I designed at the runtime, and I talked about it in detail. And this was a good round. I cleared this round as well. So on the left side, if you will see, I just talked about this will be the client. It can be web or the mobile. And then I just clubbed these two different component, load balancer and the API gateway, into single one. I was saying, okay, let me be lazy here, but this is what exactly I was talking about, that there can be two components, load balancer and API layer, which will segregate rest of your backend logic. And then as you can see that as I mentioned, like you cannot do everything in just 1 hour. So you should talk about your thought process. So since it's a global application, I told them like it should be CDN based delivery network as well, which made a lot of sense in an application like Twitter. And then I talked about we will break the microservices, the backend logic into a number of microservices, and I talked about some of the microservices. Like there will be a login where the authentication will happen. Then I talked about, okay, for posting a tweet we can use something like send tweet. For notification we will use send notification. For timeline I mentioned like retweets. They may ask you where to use put, where to use post or get. Let me know if you need more details about get, put, post. I can create another video lecture for that. But this was interesting, like overall the key functionality I just talked about in a couple of microservices. And then you might notice that for sending to it I made it bold, and it's with a reason why. But prior to that, let me show you. I segregated the database into two, users and tweets. My thought process was here that users are well manageable if we use the RDBMS, because keeping their roles, responsibility, and so many things, you can keep the users in a separate database in RDBMS form, where the tweets, where you can use the user ID from that, and then you can combine number of tweets posted by the users. And similarly for timeline creation, you can use tweets along with the this information. But for posting a tweet, because it is a critical information, so what tab theorem talks about, it should be consistent, availability, and then partitioning. In application like Twitter, definitely it should be highly available rather than consistent. For high availability, it should not give a user experience that it should not available at any given point of time, whether we are talking about read or writes. So that is where, if you notice on this microservice, I created a queue, and this queue can be Redis, Kafka, or whatever you have experience to work on, right? This queue basically take all the tweets and acknowledgement to the user that the tweet has been taken, which means user should not see any blocking, and it should all be asynchronous. And then once it is saved, there are workers associated on this queue which will take the data, distribute it on and this is like very simple architecture of database. Definitely this will not be a just single instance of the database, rather it will again be a cluster of multiple nodes. So this will take the data from here, this will process through the workers, save the information, whereas for delivering the content, I talked about cache as well. So memcache is one good example in such scenario where the readability of these applications data should be quick and fast. So that's a high level design what I've created, and then I also talk about some of the features like if you'll see here, I also gave them some understanding that users will be a master table, and then user authentication can be done by this table, and then user devices information can be set, because we should know whether it's a web user or the mobile user, and then use this location just to deliver content accordingly and more effectively. Then user subscription status, so whom they are subscribing, so that we should be able to post the tweets accordingly. And then users followers, so these can be simple format like user id, followers user id, and follow date and is active, something like very simple. And then users and tweets mapping, where the tweets will be a document kind of a structure where we can save text, picture, video, audio, though in my case it was limited to just text, where the tweets information, hashtags and text we are talking about, and comments and likes, right? So this is something which you can easily store in any NoSQL, MongoDB, DynamoDB. There is so many implementation for NoSQL. And then he specifically get into the details how the mapping can be restored, how the timelines can be built. So this is the tweet mapping that I talked about, and that's where he was like. And also while explaining this, because you cannot design everything right in just 1 hour, you should also talk about some of the real world experience that you might have from any other project. So I get them the detail about a mobile application. uh, as most of you know, like I work for Paytm as well. So I gave them some details about Paytm and some of the relevant and practical experience from that application development. Whereas I also talked about some of the project related uh, development experience and how I made that scalable, where I used consistent hashing or these kind of terminology, right? So it is important to influence your interviewer and talk about this thing. So if I just conclude this overall session, first you need to break into the requirement, then you should design a solution and do it in an agile manner. You should pause and check if it is going what they are requiring, right? And then finally you should conclude, this is the understanding, these are your requirement, and these are the points where your requirement are met. So hopefully this was a helpful session for you. Let me know in the comment box. Also, please share your experience. If you like this video, share with your friends. Thank you. Thanks for watching.